Hey guys, what is up? It is Nick from That Student Life Australia, and today we are going to tackle the 5 biggest myths of the HSC. Let's go. Alright, so let's kick ourselves off with myth number 1, and that is, do I need to do an extension subject to get a good ATAR? And the answer, flat out simply, is no. No, you do not need to do an extension topic to get a good ATAR. When you go into year 11 and obviously into year 12, there is a lot of stigma around like, oh, are you doing extension maths? Are you doing extension English? And it does seem to be that a lot of people that get really high ATARs do extension to maths, or they do extension to English. But there are plenty of other people who get very, very high and very, very good ATARs that do not do an extension topic. So basically how good your ATAR is based purely on how well you do in your particular subject. So someone who is doing woodwork can get a better ATAR than someone who is doing extension to maths simply because they are better at that subject. And that is across the board. So doing extension maths and sucking at it because you don't like maths, you don't enjoy maths, is not going to help you in the long run. So don't put yourself through it, because at the end of the day it's not going to give you a brilliant ATAR just because it has the word extension at the front of it. Alright, so myth number 2 is the statement, I need to get all band 6s in order to get an ATAR over 90. That is false, is untrue. So me personally, I got one band 5 and the rest were band 6s. I got an ATAR of 97.55. I cleared 90 by a very long way and still got a band 5. I know people who got band 4s and still got like a 94, 93 ATAR. So it is very dependent on how the rest of the state went. So don't spend all night sort of worrying about how did I go, like this was my mark on a certain test, this is never going to be good enough. In the HSC, it's dependent on how the rest of the state goes as to how your mark gets scaled, and 90 in a test doesn't necessarily mean 90 on an ATAR, so don't stay up all night worrying about it. You can get less than 90 and still get a very, very, very good ATAR, so that is myth number 2. Alright, so myth number 3 for today is, my cohort is stupid and therefore I cannot get a good ATAR. Something you kind of hear a lot when people go to a school that they don't think is good, and they feel like all the people around them just aren't up to the same standard that they are, and it sort of stems from the fact that people know that your ATAR is based off your rank in your cohort and of course your rank in the state. So basically, the reason your cohort can influence what your ATAR is going to be is because 50% of your ATAR is calculated based off internal tests, so i.e. your assessment mark. And the way that they can scale this versus the rest of the state is to see how your cohort, which includes you, goes in the HSC versus the rest of the state, and they can sort of gauge how hard your tests throughout the year were versus another school's tests. And that's kind of how you, another way in which you get scaled. There is like a trillion different ways in which you get scaled, so like don't try and figure it all out. If you are making the statement that your cohort is stupid and you think that you're smarter than them, show it on paper. Like, come first, come second, like get a really good rank, and that won't affect you in the HSC. If your cohort isn't great at the subject that you're doing and you're coming like 40th out of like 50, like that again, it's not gonna help you. So if you're gonna make statements like that, make sure that you're great at the subject and work really hard to sort of get to the top, and then that won't affect you in the slightest. So that is myth number 3 out. So you can still get a very good ATAR despite what your cohort is or is not. Another really common thing that people say, and this is number 4, is that I'm getting 50s and 60s and 70s now. How can I ever hope, and like now meaning like mid-yearly, like just before trials kind of thing, how can I ever hope to get an ATAR of 85 or above, or 90 or above? And the very simple fact is that the HSC is worth 50% of your final grade. A terrifying figure for someone who is doing quite well already, but like an opportunity for someone who is not doing as well as they would like to be at the moment. That's like another half ready of marks for you just to sort of pile on top of it and get. So if you pick up your game towards the end of the year and really nail the HSC, then there's nothing stopping you from getting like a phenomenal ATAR. And also like your trials are quite heavily weighted, and people get a little bit concerned about not doing well in your trials, but I know plenty of people who completely catastrophically ruined their trial exams and still got an ATAR about 85 or above. So it's important to do well early in the year, simply for the fact that it puts you in a very confident position to sit the HSC. Conversely, if you haven't done well during the year, that is fine, that is okay. The HSC will just be a little bit more of a test for you, but it is just a perfectly fine path for you to get a brilliant ATAR still. Alright, and capping it off with myth number 5 for today, it is, as long as I know every piece of information, then I'm going to smash the HSC. False. Incorrect. And I made this horrible mistake pretty early on in the year. Our chemistry exam for our half yearly, like I knew everything, like knew it back to front, inside out. Like I could recite my notes like without, got the test back and it was like 59%. Like what went wrong? And basically I just didn't know how to answer the questions. So I knew all the information in terms of the chemistry, and if it was just asking me about straight dot points, then I would have been fine. I would have probably aced the test. The problem was I didn't know how to answer the questions in the way the marker wanted, and this is why you'll hear people stress over and over and over again that past papers are key to your study in the HS or for the HSC. Your answering technique is just as valuable as the knowledge. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting a test back and knowing that you know all the information but just having marks stripped from you because you didn't answer it in the correct way, you didn't use this word, or this comparison wasn't drawn. Like it is frustrating, and I know like what that feels like, and I'm sure you probably do too. But it's very important that you not only know all the information, but that you practice how to answer questions. And I spent most of my study leading up to the HSC just doing past papers, and I'm eternally grateful for the results that came from doing 1 trillion past papers instead of sitting there and mind-numbingly trying to absorb all the information. Alright, so that just about caps off this episode of the 5 myths about the HSC. Please let me know what you think in the comments section down below. But those are 5 pretty big ones that I've heard either after the HSC or during the HSC that I learned through my experience. And I just wanted to pass it on to you guys so you don't have to stress about the wrong things or things that don't need stressing about. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.